In a democracy, people must be able to freely express their opinions to government officials and others. In turn, officials must recognize the importance of public opinion. That often shapes and changes policy based on the public opinion. We saw that in the last chapter with the don't ask, don't tell policy. First, let's define public opinion, since there is no single public opinion. Public opinion is really the aggregate of individual attitudes or beliefs shared by some portion of the adult population. It determines how the public is divided on any given issue and whether compromise is possible. When, when the citizenry largely agrees on an issue, there is consensus. When it is polarized between two positions, it is divided. We see this in the chart. Divided opinion, we see 44% with one position, 45% with the other. That's divided. Consensus, 82% opposing sending troops into Libya. That's consensus opinion, overwhelming in favor of one position. And how do we form public opinion? The way we do it, the views that we express as public opinions are shaped and formed through political socialization. That's the process by which individuals acquire political beliefs and values from others. Here are the models of political socialization. Think about where you get your opinions, how you form your opinions. Interactions among individuals have a major impact. Families and schools are the most common sources of political socialization. If family members have strong political views, children pick up on this form of socialization. If family members are disinterested or independent of party influence, children experience little socialization. On the flip side, when children share new political ideas from school or the media, they give parents a second chance at political socialization. Education also introduces individuals to ideas outside the home, may influence them to accept opinions different from those of their families. Higher education is generally connected with greater political participation. As people interact with peer groups, various values come into play and have an impact on their opinion formation. Some examples of this are groups based on ethnic identity and labor unions. Another model, opinion leaders. There are formal opinion leaders, there are public officials, lobbyists, journalists, religious leaders. They make a conscious effort to influence public opinion as part of their jobs. Informal leaders, they're more close associates that you hold in high regard, people like teachers, influence political attitudes of those around them, though not always intentionally. The media significantly influence political opinion because they inform the public about topics and events. They select what is important and decide how to present it, thereby creating an agenda-setting effect. And many analysts find the influence of media has now grown equal to that of the family, and this trend may impact future public debate. Political commentary by the media is not new. For years, the FCC has enforced a fairness doctrine that requires radio and TV to present controversial issues in a balanced way. But today's new media, talk radio, cable news, blog, social networks, may not be as balanced. They often tend to strengthen the beliefs of their viewers or supporters rather than change them. People are also influenced by political events. Older individuals tend to be more conservative, often due to long-held values and the influence of marriage and children. More than age, momentous political events have a long-lasting influence on shaping political attitudes. That's called the generational effect or the cohort effect. You'll see examples of this, that voters who grew up during the Great Depression, World War II, or the Watergate break-in have certain opinions about the political process based on those events. There's some influence of demographic factors on party preference and political ideologies. Education, in the past, having a college degree was linked to voting for Republicans. This has changed. Professionals and others with postgraduate degrees are increasingly voting for Democrats. And in the last 3 presidential elections, an increased percentage of those with only a high school education voted Republican. On economic policies, those with less income tend to favor liberal initiatives and government action, while those with higher incomes tend to favor conservative policies and less intervention. On cultural issues, reverse tends to be true. Still, wealthier individuals and small business owners tend to vote Republican, while laborers and union members tend to vote Democratic. Analysts have traditionally broken down political preferences based on religious denominations, but this has become less valuable in recent years. It's also an influence of race and ethnicity. African Americans have overwhelmingly identified with the Democratic Party since the 1930 New Deal's policies. But the Asian Americans tend to support the Democrats. Vietnamese Americans are strongly Republican. So, Hispanic vote, majority vote Democratic. Cuban Americans often vote Republican. Key to remember, race and ethnicity have an influence on how you're socialized politically. And in the 1980s, political analysts began to detect a gender gap. That's the difference between the percentage of women and men who vote for a particular candidate. What they find generally is women tend to support Democratic candidates more often than men, though this trend has decreased in recent years. However, women are still more likely than men to defend a number of liberal policies, opposing use of force abroad, oppose capital punishment, showing concern about environment and social welfare. A person's geographic location tends to influence his or her political attitude. Democrats tend to get support from the Northeast and the West Coast. Republicans do well in the South, Great Plains, Rocky Mountain states. Even more important is residents. Urban areas tend to be strongly Democratic, while rural areas and small communities tend to be Republican. Now let's talk about opinion polls, one of the most common methods for gathering and measuring the feelings and beliefs of the population. Newspapers and magazines began to measure public opinion in the 1880s by surveying their readers. They basically would send questionnaires to the readers, and they were able to predict election results with 70% accuracy. What they found with the magazines, as they were trying to pull through that, is their subscribers were much wealthier than the average American, so the sample wasn't really representative of the larger population. So Gallup and Roper and other folks in the 1930s, they did foresee the victory by FDR in the 1930s using modern research techniques and creating respected survey organizations that remain today. To get accurate results, the sampling or poll taking conducted must be representative and based on randomness. Trying to interview every single person eligible in a population is impractical. Random sampling gives every person an equal chance of being selected, so those actually interviewed will represent the larger population. And quota sampling, that involves finding certain types of people based on demographics and interviewing them, but that may create a sample that is non-random, inaccurate, and biased. And as far as your national surveys, Gallup and Roper, those types of organizations generally interview about 1,500 people for their national surveys. Some problems with polls. One of the problems is they're only a snapshot of an opinion at one specific moment. If they involve a large number of undecided voters, they may not be able to indicate who is truly leading. There are also sampling errors. The difference between the sample result and the true result is called sampling error. Generally occurs when samples are too small or are biased. The design and delivery of the questions can affect the survey results. The way questions are structured, the phrasing and terminology used, the order in which they're asked, the answer options given, they all can have an impact on the results. And in any survey with self-selected respondents should be viewed with great skepticism. You'll see websites, cable news shows regularly solicit responses from readers or viewers and present results as if they were based on a scientific sample, when in reality, these are unscientific polls that mislead the public either deliberately or unintentionally. Virtually all politicians view public opinion as critical to their careers, acts as a source of power in negotiating with other leaders and candidates. It's also a way to identify important issues and concerns that shape campaigns. Now, the American political culture, that's a set of shared attitudes about the country, its government, and its beliefs. A vital component of public opinion in the United States is really the considerable ambivalence with which the public regards many major national institutions. If you look at the nationwide polls, they generally will have the military and religious organizations ranked highest. Supreme Court ranked fairly high. The banks were until 2009 with the financial collapse. There's really less confidence in media, big business, and organized labor. If you take some time to see this chart, and that holds true, you'll see the military at the top of almost every survey about confidence in institutions. Here are some of the most important problems. You'll see how they change, the trends change as time goes on, depending on the circumstances. One other point about public opinion with institutions. The popular confidence in all institutions may rise or fall, and that reflects the optimism or pessimism about the general state of the nation.